First Officer Maya Thompson's alarm buzzed at 4:30 a.m., but she was already awake. She'd been lying in bed for the past 20 minutes, staring at the ceiling of her small Dallas apartment, her heart racing with anticipation. Today wasn't just another day, it was the day. Her first transcontinental flight as first officer with Apex Airlines, one of the country's largest carriers. After 5 grueling years of building hours at regional airlines, flying puddle jumpers through thunderstorms and dealing with mechanical nightmares, she'd finally made it to the major leagues. Maya swung her legs out of bed and padded to the bathroom, catching her reflection in the mirror. At 28, she could still see traces of that wide-eyed little girl who used to lie in her grandmother's backyard in Memphis, watching contrails streak across the Tennessee sky. "One day, baby girl," her grandmother would say, pointing upward, "you're gonna be up there. Don't let nobody tell you different." Her grandmother had passed 3 years ago, just months before Maya got her commercial pilot's license. Maya touched the small gold locket around her neck, her grandmother's last gift. The pre-dawn shower was quick and methodical. Maya had learned early in her aviation career that presentation mattered, perhaps more for her than for others. Her uniform had to be impeccable: navy blue pants with knife-edge creases, crisp white shirt, black tie perfectly knotted, and her blazer without a single wrinkle. She polished her wings until they gleamed, the same way she'd done since her first day as a certified pilot. Some people might call it excessive, but Maya knew the reality. As a black woman in aviation, a field where less than 3% of pilots looked like her, she couldn't afford to be anything less than perfect. By 5:45 a.m. she was on the road, her rolling flight bag in the trunk of her Honda Civic. Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport emerged from the darkness like a small city, its lights twinkling against the pre-dawn sky. Maya felt her pulse quicken as she pulled into the employee parking lot. This was real. This was happening. The crew entrance was quiet at this hour, just a few other pilots and flight attendants trickling in for early departures. Maya badged through security, exchanging friendly nods with the TSA officer who recognized her from her regional airline days. "Moving on up, I see," he said, nodding her new Apex uniform. Maya grinned. "Trying to, anyway." The crew lounge smelled like stale coffee and ambition. Maya grabbed a cup, black, no sugar, and reviewed her flight paperwork. Flight 2847, Dallas-Fort Worth to Los Angeles, Boeing 737-800. Departure time, 7:30 a.m. Captain, Derek Morrison. She didn't know much about Morrison except that he'd been with Apex for over 2 decades. Maya hoped he'd be one of the good ones, a mentor willing to share knowledge rather than one of those old-school captains who resented the changing face of aviation. At 6:15 a.m., Maya made her way to Gate 27. The terminal was beginning to wake up, coffee shops raising their metal shutters, monitors flickering to life with departure information, the first wave of travelers shuffling through with their carry-ons and bleary eyes. Maya's heart swelled with pride as she walked past the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the sun begin to paint the eastern sky in shades of pink and orange. Planes sat at their gates like sleeping giants, soon to be awakened. Gate 27 was a hive of activity. The gate agent, Tom Chen, was at his computer, likely checking the passenger list. 2 flight attendants were already there, chatting by the jetway entrance. A tall blonde woman who looked to be in her 30s and a younger man with perfectly styled hair. Maya approached with her characteristic confidence, the kind she'd had to cultivate over years of proving herself. "Good morning," Maya said brightly, extending her hand to Tom. "First Officer Thompson, checking in for Flight 2847. Tom looked up and smiled warmly. "Morning, First Officer. Captain Morrison should be here any minute. You can start your pre-flight whenever you're ready." "Thank you," Maya replied, turning to introduce herself to the flight attendants. Before she could speak, she heard footsteps behind her, heavy, purposeful strides. "Morning, everyone." The voice was deep and carried authority. Maya turned and saw Captain Derek Morrison for the first time. He was exactly what central casting would send for veteran airline captain, late 50s, silver hair, square jaw, ramrod-straight posture, and an air of absolute confidence bordering on arrogance. His uniform was immaculate, his captain's stripes gleaming gold on his shoulders and sleeves. He carried a well-worn flight bag that had probably seen 1,000 trips. Maya stepped forward, her smile genuine and professional. This was it, her first impression with her captain. "Captain Morrison, good morning. I'm First Officer Maya Thompson. It's a pleasure to meet you, and I'm really looking forward to flying with you today." She extended her hand, her grip firm but not aggressive, exactly as she'd been taught. Professional, respectful, eager but not overeager. Captain Morrison's eyes met hers, and something shifted in his expression. It was subtle, a tightening around his jaw, a flicker of something cold in his gaze. He glanced down at her outstretched hand as if it were something distasteful. The moment stretched into 2 seconds, then 3. Maya kept her hand extended, her smile beginning to feel frozen on her face. Morrison didn't shake her hand. Instead, he turned sharply on his heel, his flight bag nearly hitting her leg as he pivoted. "Tom," he said, his voice tight, walking directly toward the gate supervisor. "Tom, I need to speak with you. Now." Maya's hand dropped slowly to her side. Her smile faded. Around her, she felt the atmosphere change. The flight attendant's conversation died mid-sentence. The cheerful gate area suddenly felt cold. Maya's grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. "Baby girl, the world ain't always gonna be fair, but you hold your head up high." She watched as Captain Morrison pulled Tom several feet away, near the jetway entrance, but not far enough. His voice was low but carried just enough for her to catch fragments. "You need a different co-pilot." "Not comfortable with this situation." Maya felt something heavy settle in her chest, a feeling she'd experienced before but had hoped she'd left behind in smaller, regional airports. She glanced at the flight attendants. The blonde woman looked uncomfortable, studying her phone suddenly. The young man's eyes were wide with shock. A third flight attendant, a middle-aged man with a graying beard, had just arrived and looked confused by the tension. Tom's voice rose slightly. "Captain, First Officer Thompson has excellent credentials." "I don't care about her paperwork," Morrison interrupted, and this time his voice carried clearly across the gate area. Maya felt every pair of eyes turn toward her. Her face grew hot. Her hands, normally steady enough to land a plane in a crosswind, began to tremble slightly. She clasped them behind her back, standing straight, refusing to show weakness. This couldn't be happening. Not today. Not on her first major airline flight. Not in 2024. But the sick feeling in her stomach told her exactly what was happening. And as Captain Morrison continued his hushed but intense conversation with Tom, Maya Thompson realized that her perfect morning had just shattered into 1,000 pieces. Tom Chen had been a gate supervisor for Apex Airlines for 15 years. In that time, he dealt with drunk passengers, medical emergencies, mechanical delays, and every kind of crew drama imaginable. But in all those years, he'd never had a captain look him in the eye and request a different co-pilot for reasons that had nothing to do with safety or qualifications. "Captain Morrison," Tom said carefully, keeping his voice low, "I need you to be very clear about what you're asking me here. First Officer Thompson has an exemplary record. She transferred from Regional Express with outstanding recommendations, over 2,000 flight hours, and her type rating on the 737 is current and—" "I don't care about her flight hours," Morrison interrupted, his face reddening slightly. He glanced back at Maya, who stood near the gate counter, her posture military straight but her eyes betraying hurt. He quickly looked away. "Look, Tom, this isn't personal. I just work better with certain co-pilots. I have a system, a rhythm, and I need someone who fits." Tom felt his jaw tighten. "Fits how exactly?" Morrison shifted his weight, and Tom noticed the captain's hand gripping his flight bag tighter. "Someone I've flown with before. Johnson Williams, even that new Guy Peterson. Anyone but—" He waved his hand vaguely in Maya's direction without looking at her. This situation. This situation, Tom repeated, his voice hardening. Captain, she's not a situation. She's a qualified first officer assigned to your flight. What specifically concerns you about her abilities? It's not about abilities, Morrison said quickly, then seemed to realize his mistake. I mean, look, I've been flying for 25 years. I know what works for me. Certain people just don't mesh with my cockpit management style. Certain people, Tom echoed, and now his eyes were locked on Morrison's face with an intensity that made the captain uncomfortable. What does that mean, Captain Morrison? Explain certain people to me. Morrison's face flushed deeper. Behind him, the 3 flight attendants had stopped all pretense of not listening. The blonde woman, Sarah Jenkins, had her hand over her mouth. The younger man, Marcus, looked like he wanted to disappear. But the older flight attendant, Derek Collins, wore a smirk that made Tom's blood boil. You know what I mean, Morrison said, lowering his voice even further. The industry is changing too fast. They're pushing quotas, diversity hires, and suddenly we're supposed to just accept. He caught himself, but not quickly enough. Tom's voice went ice cold. Diversity hires. Captain, are you seriously suggesting that First Officer Thompson wasn't hired based on merit? I'm saying I have the right to fly with someone I trust, Morrison snapped, his composure cracking. She probably got fast-tracked because of some affirmative action program, and now I'm supposed to put my license and my passengers' lives in the hands of. Stop talking, right now. Tom's command was sharp enough that Morrison actually closed his mouth. Captain Morrison, you need to listen to me very carefully. What you're describing is discrimination, not preference, not personality conflict, discrimination. Morrison's eyes widened. I never said anything about race. You're putting words in my. You didn't have to say it, Tom cut him off. You've flown with new first officers before. I've processed your flights. Last month you flew with First Officer Peterson on his 2nd day with Apex. You didn't request a change. 2 weeks ago, First Officer Anderson, also new to mainline. No complaints. Tom leaned in slightly. The only difference between them and First Officer Thompson is standing 20 feet away from us, pretending she can't hear this conversation. Morrison's face had gone from red to nearly purple. This is harassment. You're harassing me based on. Based on what? Your transparent attempt to refuse to fly with a qualified black woman. Tom's voice was barely above a whisper now, but it carried the weight of fury. Because that's what's happening here, Captain. And if you think your seniority or your union is going to protect you from a discrimination complaint, you're wrong. She doesn't belong in my cockpit. Morrison finally burst out, loud enough that his words echoed across the gate area. The effect was instantaneous and devastating. Every head in the gate area turned. Passengers who had begun to line up for boarding stopped mid-conversation. The flight attendants stood frozen. And Maya Thompson, proud, accomplished, professional Maya Thompson, visibly flinched as if she'd been physically struck. Tom watched her face transform from hurt to humiliation to something harder. Her eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. Instead, she lifted her chin higher, her hands still clasped behind her back, standing like a soldier facing a firing squad with dignity. Morrison seemed to realize what he'd done. I didn't mean, that came out wrong. No, Tom said flatly. I think that came out exactly how you meant it. He pulled out his phone. Captain, I'm going to make a call now. I strongly suggest you remain right here. Who are you calling? Morrison demanded, but his voice had lost its authority. He suddenly sounded like what he was, a man who just ended his career with 6 words. Someone way above my pay grade, Tom said, already dialing, because this decision isn't mine to make anymore. Derek Collins, the older flight attendant, chuckled nervously and muttered to Sarah, Morrison's just old school. Everyone's so sensitive now. Shut up, Derek, Sarah hissed, her face pale. Just shut up. Marcus, the younger flight attendant, slowly walked over to Maya. "First Officer Thompson," he said quietly, "I'm really sorry about." "Don't," Maya said softly, her voice steady despite the emotion in her eyes. "Please don't apologize for him. You didn't do anything wrong." "Neither did you," Marcus said firmly. Maya gave him a small, grateful nod, but her attention was on Tom, who had his phone pressed to his ear. She watched the gate supervisor's face as he spoke to whoever was on the other end. His expression was grave, angry, and absolutely resolute. "Ms. Walsh," Tom said into the phone, "we have a code red situation at Gate 27. Captain Morrison has refused to fly with First Officer Thompson, and I have reason to believe it's racial discrimination." "Yes, ma'am, she's here." He was very explicit. "Yes, I understand. Right away." Tom lowered the phone and looked at Morrison. "Captain, the Chief Operating Officer is on her way down here personally. She wants you to stay exactly where you are." Morrison's face went ashen. "Jennifer Walsh, you called Jennifer Walsh." "You bet I did," Tom said. "And Captain, if I were you, I'd start thinking very carefully about what you're going to say to her, because your career just became very, very complicated." In the distance, the sound of rapid footsteps echoed through the terminal. They were getting closer, faster, angrier. Someone was coming, and from the look on Tom's face, Captain Derek Morrison's morning was about to get much worse. Maya stood perfectly still, her heart pounding, wondering if the woman approaching would be her salvation or just another person who'd find a way to blame her for disrupting the smooth operation of the airline. She'd been disappointed before. But something in Tom's eyes when he looked at her, respect, anger on her behalf, determination, gave her a tiny spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, today wouldn't end the way these situations usually did. Jennifer Walsh had started her morning at 5:00 a.m., the way she did every weekday. A 5-mile run through her Dallas neighborhood, a protein smoothie, and then the familiar drive to DFW Airport as the sun painted the Texas sky in shades of amber and gold. At 45, she'd been with Apex Airlines for 23 years, starting as a flight attendant fresh out of college and working her way through every department: operations, customer service, scheduling, and finally to the executive suite. As Chief Operating Officer, she was responsible for the daily functioning of an airline that operated over 800 flights per day. It was a job that required equal parts of strategic thinking, crisis management, and an iron will. Jennifer had all three in abundance. This Thursday morning, she was sitting in Conference Room 3A on the executive floor, leading a quarterly review meeting with her senior leadership team. 15 people sat around the polished mahogany table, directors of operations, maintenance, customer service, and flight standards. They were discussing on-time performance metrics when her phone, set to silent but always within reach, began vibrating insistently. The name on the screen made her pause. Tom Chen, Gate Supervisor, Terminal C. Tom never called her directly, ever. They had protocols, chains of command, layers of management between a gate supervisor and the COO. If Tom was calling her personal line, something was seriously wrong. "Excuse me," Jennifer said, standing abruptly. "I need to take this." She walked to the corner of the room, her heels clicking on the polished floor. "Tom, what's happened? Is there a security situation?" "Ms. Walsh," Tom's voice was tight with barely controlled anger, "we have a code red situation at Gate 27. Captain Morrison has refused to fly with his assigned first officer, and I have reason to believe it's racial discrimination." Jennifer felt her entire body go rigid. "Say that again." "Captain Morrison is refusing to fly with First Officer Maya Thompson. She's a black woman who transferred from Regional Express. He's demanding a different co-pilot, and when I pressed him for reasons, he became hostile and made it very clear this is about her race, not her qualifications." Jennifer's mind raced through the implications. Discrimination lawsuit, FAA investigation, media nightmare. But more than that, more than the corporate liability or the PR disaster, she felt a deep, personal fury. She'd spent 23 years fighting to make Apex Airlines a place where talent mattered more than demographics, where the cockpit door was open to anyone qualified to sit behind it. "Is First Officer Thompson there?" Jennifer asked, already moving toward the door. "Yes, ma'am. She's standing here, maintaining her composure, but she heard everything. The passengers heard some of it too." "Keep everyone there. I'm coming down right now." Jennifer's voice had taken on a quality her leadership team knew well, the tone that meant someone was about to face consequences. She ended the call and turned to her assistant, Michael, who'd followed her out of the conference room. "Get HR Director Patricia Morgan on the phone. Tell her to meet me at Gate 27, Terminal C, immediately. Tell her it's a discrimination incident involving a captain." Michael's eyes widened. "Should I call legal?" "Not yet. First, I need to hear this captain explain himself." Jennifer was already striding toward the elevator, her mind shifting into crisis mode. "Cancel my 10 a.m. with maintenance. Push everything else back 2 hours." "Jennifer, Ms. Walsh, what about the meeting?" Michael gestured back toward the conference room where 15 senior leaders sat waiting. Jennifer stopped at the elevator and turned, her expression harder than granite. "Tell them the meeting is over. Tell them their COO is dealing with something more important than metrics. She's dealing with someone who thinks their bigotry trumps our values." The elevator doors opened, and Jennifer stepped inside, jabbing the button for the ground floor. As the doors closed, she caught her reflection in the polished metal. She looked calm, professional, every inch the executive. But inside, she was remembering. She was remembering her first day as a flight attendant in 2002, when a passenger had refused to take safety instructions from her because she was a woman. "Get me a real authority figure," he demanded. Her supervisor had moved her to the back galley rather than confront the passenger. She was remembering applying for her first management position and being told she didn't have the right temperament. Code for being too assertive, too ambitious, too unwilling to smile and stay quiet. She was remembering the countless times she'd had to work twice as hard, be twice as qualified, and keep her composure in situations where her male colleagues would have been praised for passion, while she was labeled emotional. The elevator descended, and with each floor, Jennifer's resolve hardened. She'd made it to the top. She had the power now, and she'd be damned if she was going to let anyone, veteran captain or otherwise, turn Apex Airlines into a place where talent took a backseat to prejudice. The elevator doors opened onto the main terminal level, and Jennifer emerged into the morning bustle of travelers. She walked with purpose, her stride long and quick, weaving through the crowds with the ease of someone who'd navigated these corridors for 2 decades. Passengers moved aside, sensing the intensity radiating from her. Her phone buzzed. "Patricia Morgan from HR. On my way, ETA 3 minutes." Jennifer typed back, "Meet me there. Bring documentation on First Officer Thompson's file and our anti-discrimination policy." She passed Gate 15, then Gate 20. The smell of airport coffee and fresh pastries from the nearby cafe did nothing to calm the adrenaline pumping through her system. Gate 25. Almost there. Jennifer's mind was already formulating questions, anticipating deflections, preparing for the conversation ahead. She'd dealt with discrimination cases before, always ugly, always complicated, always requiring careful documentation. But a captain refusing to fly with a qualified first officer based on race, in front of witnesses, this was unprecedented. As she rounded the corner, Gate 27 came into view. She could see the cluster of people near the jetway, Tom Chen standing with his arms crossed, a tall silver-haired man in a captain's uniform looking increasingly uncomfortable, 3 flight attendants hovering nearby, and standing slightly apart from everyone, shoulders back and chin up, a young black woman in a first officer's uniform. Even from a distance, Jennifer could read the body language. The captain's defensive posture, Tom's protective stance, the flight attendant's uncertainty, and the first officer, Maya Thompson, standing with the kind of dignity that came from someone who'd been hurt but refused to break. Jennifer's heels clicked faster on the tile floor. A few passengers waiting at the gate looked up, sensing drama. One pulled out his phone, and Jennifer made a mental note. This might be recorded. Good. Let it be recorded. Let the world see how Apex Airlines handled discrimination. "Ms. Walsh," Tom called out as she approached, relief flooding his face. Jennifer raised one hand, her eyes locked on Captain Morrison. She didn't slow down, didn't break stride, didn't soften her expression. She walked directly up to the captain, stopping just close enough that her presence was undeniable but far enough to remain professional. "Captain Morrison," she said, her voice calm but carrying absolute authority. "I'm Jennifer Walsh, Chief Operating Officer. You and I need to have a conversation, right now, in the operations room." Morrison opened his mouth to speak, but Jennifer cut him off with a look that had made seasoned executives reconsider their arguments. "Not here, not in front of passengers." She turned slightly, acknowledging Maya for the first time with a nod that conveyed respect. "First Officer Thompson, please remain here. Tom, ensure the crew stays put." Then Jennifer turned back to Morrison, and her next words were quiet enough that only he could hear them, but they carried the weight of an avalanche. "Captain, you have exactly 60 seconds to walk with me to that operations room, or I will have security escort you. Choose wisely." Morrison's face went from red to pale. He picked up his flight bag with shaking hands. Jennifer turned on her heel and walked toward the operations room door 20 feet away. Behind her, she heard Morrison's footsteps following. The reckoning had begun. The operations room was small and utilitarian, gray walls, a metal desk, 2 chairs, and a computer terminal that hummed quietly in the corner. It smelled like old coffee and stress. Jennifer Walsh entered first, holding the door open with one hand, her eyes never leaving Captain Morrison as he shuffled in behind her. His earlier confidence had evaporated, replaced by the nervous energy of a man who just realized he'd miscalculated badly. "Sit," Jennifer said, not as a request but as a command. Morrison sat in the chair across from the desk, setting his flight bag on the floor with hands that weren't quite steady. Jennifer remained standing, positioning herself between Morrison and the door, a subtle power move she'd learned years ago. Never let someone feel like they can escape a difficult conversation. "Ms. Walsh, I think there's been a misunderstanding," Morrison began, attempting to regain some authority in his voice. "Stop." Jennifer's single word cut through the air like a blade. "Before you say another word, Captain Morrison, I want you to understand something. I didn't pull you off a flight deck during boarding because of a misunderstanding. I left a meeting with 15 senior leaders because Tom Chen, a gate supervisor who has never once called me directly in 15 years, told me we have a discrimination situation. So let's be very clear. Whatever comes out of your mouth next better be the absolute truth." Morrison swallowed hard. "I simply requested a different co-pilot. That's within my right as captain. I have final authority over." "You have final authority over the safety of your aircraft," Jennifer interrupted, leaning against the desk with her arms crossed. "You do not have authority to discriminate against qualified crew members. So let me ask you directly, what specific, documented concerns do you have about First Officer Maya Thompson's ability to safely operate that aircraft?" "I didn't say she couldn't." "What concerns, Captain Morrison?" Jennifer's voice rose slightly. "What deficiency in her training? What gap in her experience? What failure in her certification?" Morrison shifted in his seat. "It's not about deficiencies. It's about compatibility. I work better with certain co-pilots, people I've flown with before, people who understand my systems." "First Officer Thompson has 2,034 flight hours," Jennifer said, pulling her phone from her pocket. While walking to the gate, she'd already pulled up Maya's personnel file. She has a type rating on the 737-800. She completed her transition training at the top of her class. She has 0 incidents, 0 violations, and commendations from 3 separate captains at Regional Express. Jennifer looked up from her phone. Her last captain wrote, and I quote, "First Officer Thompson demonstrates exceptional situational awareness, superior technical knowledge, and the kind of professionalism that reflects the best of aviation." So explain to me, Captain, what about that record concerns you? Those are just numbers on paper, Morrison said, his frustration growing. Flying is about more than credentials, it's about. The door opened, and Patricia Morgan, the HR director, entered carrying a tablet and a thick folder. She was a woman in her early 50s with sharp eyes and an expression that suggested she'd already heard enough to form an opinion. "Patricia, thank you for coming," Jennifer said. Captain Morrison was just explaining why First Officer Thompson's impeccable record isn't sufficient for him. Patricia took the seat beside Jennifer, opening her tablet. "Captain Morrison, I have your file here as well. In 25 years with Apex Airlines, you've flown with approximately 340 different first officers. Is that correct?" Morrison blinked, caught off guard by the specificity. I suppose that's accurate." "In those 25 years, you've requested a crew change exactly 4 times, Patricia continued, her finger scrolling through the data. "Once in 2008 when a first officer was intoxicated, appropriate request. Once in 2015 when a first officer was medically unfit, appropriate. Once in 2019 when a first officer's certification had actually lapsed, appropriate. And today," she looked up. "So what makes today's request appropriate, Captain?" Morrison's jaw tightened. "I don't appreciate being interrogated like a criminal. I've given this airline 25 years of perfect service." 24 years and 11 months, Jennifer corrected coldly. "Because your 25 years ended about 10 minutes ago when you told Tom Chen that First Officer Thompson doesn't belong in your cockpit." The color drained from Morrison's face. I didn't mean it like." "How did you mean it?" Jennifer pushed off the desk and took a step closer. "Because from where I'm standing, you refused to fly with a qualified first officer, and when pressed for a reason, you couldn't provide a single legitimate concern about her abilities. Then you made a comment about the industry changing too fast and suggested she was a diversity hire. Those are Tom's exact quotes from your conversation. Would you like to dispute them?" Morrison's mouth opened and closed. "I was frustrated. Tom was pushing me and I." "And you said what you really think." Jennifer's voice was steel. "Let me help you, Captain. Let me ask you the question that matters. If First Officer Thompson were white, would we be having this conversation?" The silence that followed was deafening. Morrison stared at Jennifer, then at Patricia, then at his hands. Seconds ticked by. The operations room's fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Somewhere in the terminal, a gate agent announced a boarding call. "Answer the question, Captain," Patricia said quietly. "Would you have requested a crew change if First Officer Thompson were white?" "That's not fair," Morrison finally said, his voice cracking slightly. "You're trying to trap me." "I'm trying to understand why a captain with 25 years of experience suddenly can't fly with a first officer who has better credentials than half the people you've flown with this year," Jennifer shot back. "The only variable that's different today is her race. So unless you can give me another reason, any other legitimate, documented, professional reason, then yes, Captain Morrison, this is about discrimination." Morrison stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "I don't have to sit here and be accused." "Sit down." Jennifer's voice dropped to a level of authority that made even Patricia glance at her sharply. "You will sit, and you will answer my questions, or I will call security to escort you out of this airport in handcuffs for insubordination. Your choice." Morrison sat, and for the first time Jennifer saw something crack in his facade. His shoulders slumped slightly. His hands gripped his knees. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. "The standards are dropping," he said, not meeting their eyes. "They're pushing people through training who shouldn't be there. The military was the same way: quotas, affirmative action, lowering the bar so certain people can pass. And now I'm supposed to trust my life, my license, my passengers' lives to someone who probably got fast-tracked." "Stop talking," Jennifer said, her voice shaking with controlled fury. "Stop talking right now, Captain Morrison." But Morrison seemed unable to stop, like a dam had burst. "I've earned everything I have. I worked my way up the right way, and now they're just handing out wings to check diversity boxes." "First Officer Thompson earned her wings," Jennifer's voice thundered through the small room. Patricia actually flinched. "She earned every single hour in her logbook. She passed every test, met every standard, and exceeded every requirement. And you have the audacity, the unmitigated arrogance, to suggest she didn't earn her place because she's black." Morrison looked up, and Jennifer saw it clearly now. Not just prejudice, but the genuine belief that he was right. That his 25 years gave him the moral authority to judge who belonged in a cockpit and who didn't. "Captain Derek Morrison," Jennifer said, her voice now controlled but cold as winter, "you are suspended from all flight duties effective immediately, pending a full investigation into discrimination and violation of Apex Airlines' Code of Conduct." "You can't do that." Morrison jumped to his feet. "I have union representation, I have rights." "And First Officer Thompson has rights too," Jennifer fired back. "The right to work without facing discrimination. The right to be judged on her merit, not her skin color. Your union can file whatever grievances they want, but you're not flying today, tomorrow, or any day until this investigation is complete." Patricia was already typing on her tablet. "Captain Morrison, you'll receive formal notification within the hour. You'll need to surrender your employee badge and—" 25 years, Morrison said, and now his voice broke. 25 years of perfect safety, and you're throwing me away over this." Jennifer stepped closer, and when she spoke, her voice carried not anger but something harder: disappointment. "No, Captain, you threw away 25 years. You did this the moment you decided that your prejudice was more important than a colleague's dignity. Now get out of my operations room." Morrison grabbed his flight bag with shaking hands and stumbled toward the door. Before he could open it, Jennifer spoke one more time. "Captain Morrison, security will escort you to the parking lot, and if you speak to any media, any passengers, or attempt to contact First Officer Thompson, we'll add harassment to the list of charges. Are we clear?" Morrison didn't answer. He simply walked out, and the door closed behind him with a hollow click that sounded like the end of a career. Jennifer Walsh took 3 deep breaths in the operations room after Captain Morrison left. Her hands were trembling, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of righteous anger. Patricia Morgan sat quietly, still processing what they'd just witnessed. "That was one of the hardest conversations I've ever had," Jennifer said softly. "You did the right thing," Patricia replied. "But Jennifer, you know this isn't over. His union will fight this. We'll need depositions, documentation." "Then we'll give them documentation. Tom Chen heard everything. Passengers heard some of it, and we have Morrison's own words." Jennifer straightened her blazer and squared her shoulders. "Right now, I need to deal with the rest of that crew." Patricia's eyes widened. "You're not thinking." "I am." Jennifer's voice was firm. "Come with me." They walked back into the gate area, where an awkward tableau awaited them. Tom Chen stood protectively near Maya Thompson, who remained composed but looked emotionally exhausted. The 3 flight attendants, Sarah Jenkins, Marcus Webb, and Derek Collins, stood in a tight cluster, whispering nervously. Several passengers had their phones out, some recording, others texting furiously. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. "Attention everyone," Jennifer announced, her voice carrying across the gate area. I'm Jennifer Walsh, Chief Operating Officer of Apex Airlines. Due to a crew personnel issue, Flight 2847 to Los Angeles will be delayed. We're arranging a replacement crew and will have you on your way as soon as possible. We sincerely apologize for this inconvenience. A groan rippled through the waiting passengers. One businessman in a suit called out, "How long of a delay are we talking about?" "Approximately 90 minutes, sir. We'll be offering meal vouchers to all passengers." Jennifer turned away from the passengers and focused on the crew. "First Officer Thompson, flight attendants, I need you all in the operations room. Now." Maya followed, her face unreadable. The three flight attendants exchanged nervous glances but complied. Tom started to follow, but Jennifer shook her head. "Stay here, Tom. Make the announcements about the delay and start calling ops for a replacement crew." Inside the operations room, the space suddenly felt very crowded. Jennifer positioned herself in front of the door again, with Patricia beside her. Maya stood to one side, and the three flight attendants clustered together like students called to the principal's office. "Does someone want to explain what I'm about to hear?" Jennifer asked, her gaze moving from face to face. "Because before I make any decisions, I want to know exactly what happened at this gate during Captain Morrison's conversation with Tom Chen." Silence. Sarah Jenkins studied her shoes. Marcus Webb shifted his weight nervously. Derek Collins crossed his arms defensively. "First Officer Thompson," Jennifer said gently, "tell me what you heard and saw." Maya's voice was steady, but Jennifer could hear the hurt underneath. "Captain Morrison refused to shake my hand. He immediately pulled Tom aside and requested a different co-pilot. I heard him say, 'Certain people don't belong in my cockpit.' When Tom questioned him, he became more explicit about not wanting to fly with me because of who I am." "And where were the flight attendants during this conversation?" Jennifer asked. "We were standing at the gate," Sarah said quietly. "We heard some of it." "Some of it," Jennifer repeated. "What did you hear, Sarah?" Sarah's voice was barely audible. "The captain said he wanted a different co-pilot. He said something about certain people not fitting his style." "And what did you do when you heard that?" I didn't know what to do. He's a captain. I'm just a flight attendant." Jennifer turned to Marcus. "What about you?" Marcus looked miserable. "I heard more than Sarah. I heard him say First Officer Thompson didn't belong in his cockpit. I felt sick about it, but I didn't say anything. I thought maybe Tom would handle it." "Derek," Jennifer's voice hardened as she addressed the older flight attendant. "What did you hear?" Derek Collins shrugged, his expression defensive. "Look, Morrison's old school. Yeah, he was complaining about having to fly with her, but it's not like he used any slurs or anything. He's just set in his ways. Everyone's so sensitive these days." "Stop right there," Jennifer cut him off, her voice like ice. "Did you or did you not hear Captain Morrison express discriminatory views about First Officer Thompson?" "He was just venting," Derek insisted. "Guys like Morrison, they remember when flying was different, more professional. He's just uncomfortable with all these new diversity quotas." "There are no diversity quotas," Patricia interjected sharply. "Every pilot hired by this airline meets the exact same standards." "Sure, on paper," Derek said with a smirk, "but we all know they're pushing women and minorities through faster." "Get out." Jennifer's voice exploded through the room like thunder. "Derek Collins, you are suspended effective immediately. Get your things and report to HR tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Security will escort you out of this terminal." Derek's smirk vanished. "What? I didn't do anything." "You perpetuated discrimination. You defended it. You made it clear you share Captain Morrison's views. That violates every code of conduct we have." Jennifer pulled out her phone and texted security. "You're done. Leave." Derek sputtered protests, but Jennifer opened the door and gestured sharply. A moment later, 2 security officers appeared and escorted a protesting Derek Collins out of the operations room. The door closed behind them. Sarah and Marcus stood frozen, their faces pale. Jennifer turned back to them, her expression hard. "And now we deal with you too." "Ms. Walsh, I swear I didn't agree with him," Marcus started. "No, you just stayed silent while your colleague was humiliated," Jennifer said. "Both of you. You heard discrimination happening, you witnessed a qualified pilot being demeaned because of her race, and you did nothing." "What were we supposed to do?" Sarah asked, tears forming in her eyes. "He's a captain with 25 years seniority. We're flight attendants. If we'd spoken up, he could have written us up, gotten us fired." "So you chose your comfort over her dignity," Jennifer said flatly. "You chose to protect yourselves instead of protecting a colleague who was being targeted." Maya, who had been silent, finally spoke. "Ms. Walsh, they didn't participate. They just didn't know what to." "First Officer Thompson," Jennifer said gently but firmly, "I appreciate your grace, but this is exactly the problem. Good people staying silent while discrimination happens. That's how discrimination survives." She turned back to Sarah and Marcus. "You two are removed from this flight. You will complete mandatory discrimination and active bystander intervention training before you return to flight duty." "You're grounding us," Marcus asked, his voice cracking. "I'm educating you," Jennifer corrected. "You'll be paid for your training days, and there will be no formal discipline on your records if you complete the program. But you need to understand that working for Apex Airlines means standing up for each other. Not just when it's convenient, not just when it's safe. Always." Sarah was crying now. "I'm so sorry. First Officer Thompson, I'm so sorry. I should have said something." Maya nodded, her own eyes glistening. Jennifer's voice softened slightly. "Sarah, Marcus, I don't think you're bad people. I think you were in a difficult situation and you didn't know how to handle it. That's why the training exists. But I need you to understand something. Silence is complicity. When you witness discrimination and say nothing, you're telling the victim that no one will defend them. You're telling the perpetrator that their behavior is acceptable. That ends today." Patricia stepped forward. "Sarah, Marcus, report to HR on Monday morning at 8 a.m. You'll receive your training schedule then." The two flight attendants nodded miserably and left the room, leaving only Jennifer, Patricia, and Maya. Maya finally let her composure crack slightly. "I can't believe you just did all that." "I can't believe I had to," Jennifer replied. "But First Officer Thompson, Maya, I need to ask you something and I want you to answer honestly. Do you want to fly today?" Maya looked startled. "What?" "You've been through trauma today. No one would blame you if you wanted to go home, take some time. We'll pay you for the full trip." Maya was quiet for a long moment. Then she straightened her shoulders, and Jennifer saw something fierce in her eyes. "I want to fly. I didn't earn these wings to let people like Morrison take them away from me." Jennifer smiled for the first time that morning. "Then let's get you a crew that deserves to fly with you." Jennifer Walsh stepped out of the operations room with Maya Thompson at her side, leaving Patricia to handle the paperwork for the suspended crew members. Tom Chen was at the gate counter, phone pressed to his ear, coordinating with crew scheduling. When he saw Jennifer, he covered the receiver. "Scheduling is pulling people off reserve," Tom said. "They're saying 30 minutes for a captain, maybe 45 for flight attendants." "Not good enough," Jennifer replied. She pulled out her phone and dialed directly to the crew scheduling office. "This is Jennifer Walsh. Who's the supervisor on duty right now?" A surprised voice answered. "Ms. Walsh, this is Danny Rodriguez. How can I?" "Danny, I need Captain Sarah Martinez and First Officer James Kim pulled from whatever they're doing and sent to Gate 27 immediately. I don't care if you have to helicopter them in from their hotel." There was a pause. "Ma'am, Captain Martinez is actually here at the airport. She just finished a red-eye from Seattle and was heading home, but pulling her for another flight after she already." "Call her, tell her exactly what happened here today. Tell her I'm personally asking. If she says no, I'll understand, but I want her to have the choice." Yes, ma'am. And First Officer Kim is on reserve standby, currently in the crew lounge. I can have him at the gate in 10 minutes. Do it. And Danny, send me 3 of your best flight attendants, people who understand what it means to have each other's backs. Jennifer ended the call and turned to Maya. Captain Sarah Martinez is someone you should know about. She's been with Apex for 18 years. She's also one of only 7 Latina captains at this airline. If anyone understands what you went through today, it's her. Maya's eyes widened. You're assigning her specifically because... I'm assigning her because she's one of our best captains, and because when I tell her what happened, she'll volunteer anyway, Jennifer said. But Maya, I want you to know something. You don't have to fly with a female captain or a minority captain to prove a point. This isn't about optics. This is about getting you a crew that will treat you with the respect you deserve. I understand, Maya said softly, but honestly, after this morning flying with someone who gets it, that would help. 15 minutes later, Captain Sarah Martinez strode through the terminal, still in her uniform from the red-eye flight. She was 44 years old, with dark hair pulled back in a neat bun, sharp brown eyes, and the kind of confident bearing that came from commanding aircraft for nearly 2 decades. She carried her flight bag over one shoulder and a large coffee in her other hand. She walked directly to Jennifer, who was now sitting with Maya near the gate. Jennifer, I got Danny's call. He told me what happened. She turned to Maya, setting down her coffee and extending her hand. First Officer Thompson, I'm Sarah Martinez. I'm sorry you had to deal with Morrison's garbage this morning. Maya shook her hand, feeling the firm grip, seeing the genuine warmth in Sarah's eyes. Thank you, Captain Martinez, and thank you for coming back when you were probably heading home to sleep. Please call me Sarah when we're not in the cockpit, she said, sitting down beside Maya. And for the record, I've been flying with idiots like Morrison my entire career. My first year as a first officer, I had a captain tell me women belonged in the galley, not the flight deck. He tried to get me removed from his trips for 6 months straight. What happened? Maya asked. He retired eventually, still bitter that the world was changing without his permission, Sarah said with a slight smile. But more importantly, I'm still here. I'm a captain. I've flown 12,000 hours, trained dozens of first officers, and I have a spotless safety record. People like Morrison, they're dinosaurs, and dinosaurs go extinct. Jennifer watched the 2 pilots talking, and she saw some of the tension leave Maya's shoulders. This was why she'd called Sarah specifically. Sometimes people needed to see that they weren't alone, that others had walked this path before them and survived. First Officer James Kim arrived next, a Korean-American pilot in his early 30s with an easy smile and a reputation for being one of the most technically proficient young pilots at Apex. When Danny had explained the situation, James had immediately agreed to the assignment. First Officer Thompson, James said, shaking Maya's hand. I heard what happened. For what it's worth, I looked up your training scores. You're way more qualified than I was at your stage. That's kind of you to say, Maya replied. I'm not being kind. I'm being honest, James said. Also, I should mention that my first month at Apex, I had a passenger tell me I didn't look like a real pilot. Some people are just stuck in the 1950s. 3 flight attendants arrived together. Lisa Chen, a veteran attendant in her 50s, Robert Williams, a tall black man in his 40s, and Emma Rodriguez, Sarah Martinez's cousin, in her late 20s. Danny had chosen them carefully. They were among the most professional, most empathetic crew members Apex had. Lisa approached Maya first. First Officer Thompson, I'm Lisa, and these are Robert and Emma. We heard what Captain Morrison did, and we want you to know that's not who we are as an airline. Thank you, Maya said, touched by the gesture. Also, Robert added, if anyone, and I mean anyone, gives you trouble today, you let us know. We've got your back. Jennifer watched the new crew come together, introducing themselves, sharing brief stories, building the rapport that would make for a good flight. This was what aviation was supposed to be: professionals supporting professionals, regardless of what they looked like or where they came from. Captain Martinez pulled Jennifer aside. "Okay, real talk. Is Maya actually okay to fly? Because if she needs time, we can do this tomorrow." "I asked her the same thing," Jennifer said. "She wants to fly." Sarah nodded slowly. "Then we'll make sure it's a good flight. But Jennifer, you know this is going to be messy, right? Morrison's union will fight the suspension. There will be publicity. Some of the old guard will close ranks around him." "Let them," Jennifer said firmly. "I'm not backing down on this. I've spent 23 years trying to make this airline a place where everyone can succeed based on merit. I'm not going to let Morrison or anyone else undo that." Sarah squeezed Jennifer's shoulder. "You're doing the right thing. It's going to be hard, but it's right." 20 minutes later, the new crew gathered for a brief pre-flight briefing. Captain Martinez led the meeting with calm efficiency, going over the flight plan, weather conditions, and standard procedures. She treated Maya with the same professional respect she'd give any first officer. No condescension, no over-explanation, just straightforward communication between colleagues. "First Officer Thompson," Sarah said, "you'll be pilot flying today. I want to see what you can do." Maya felt a surge of confidence. Being pilot flying meant she'd handle the takeoff and landing while the captain monitored and managed the systems. It was a vote of confidence, and she knew it. "Thank you, Captain, I'm ready." As the crew headed toward the aircraft, Jennifer walked alongside Maya. "First Officer Thompson, I want to give you my card. If you need anything, and I mean anything in the coming weeks, you call me directly." Maya took the card, her throat tight with emotion. "Ms. Walsh, I don't know how to thank you. What you did today, no one's ever stood up for me like that." Jennifer stopped walking and turned to face Maya fully. "You shouldn't have to thank me for doing what's right, but you're welcome. Now go show everyone what a real pilot looks like." Maya walked down the jetway with her new crew, feeling lighter than she had all morning. Behind her, she heard Jennifer giving Tom Chen final instructions. The passengers were finally boarding, 90 minutes late but finally moving. As Maya stepped into the cockpit of the Boeing 737-800, Captain Sarah Martinez was already settling into the left seat, running through pre-flight checks. The familiar smell of aircraft, metal, hydraulic fluid, and possibility filled Maya's lungs. "Ready to get to work, First Officer Thompson?" Sarah asked with a warm smile. "Ready, Captain Martinez," Maya replied, sliding into the right seat and pulling out her checklist. Through the cockpit window, Maya could see Jennifer Walsh standing at the gate window, watching. Their eyes met for a moment, and Jennifer gave a small nod, a gesture of solidarity, of support, of unwavering belief. Maya returned the nod, then turned her attention to her instruments. It was time to fly. The Boeing 737-800 sat at gate 27 like a patient giant, waiting for its crew to breathe life into its systems. Maya Thompson settled into the right seat, her hands moving through the pre-flight checklist with practiced precision. Despite everything that had happened that morning, the cockpit felt like home, the place where her training, her skill, and her passion all came together. Captain Sarah Martinez was completing her own checks in the left seat, calling out items in a rhythm that felt comfortable, professional. "Oxygen." "Tested and set," Maya responded, checking the oxygen mask deployment. "Flight instruments." "Cross-checked and set." They moved through the checklist together, a dance as old as aviation itself. But there was something different about this flight, something Maya could feel in the air between them. Sarah wasn't just going through the motions. She was actively engaged, treating Maya as a full partner rather than a subordinate to be tolerated. Behind them, the cabin came alive with activity. Lisa Chen's voice came through on the intercom, professional and warm. "Captain, we have 147 passengers aboard. Boarding is complete. Doors are armed and cross-checked." "Thank you, Lisa," Sarah responded. Then she turned to Maya with a slight smile. "You ready for this? Your takeoff, your landing. Show me what you've got." Maya felt her pulse quicken, not from nerves but from anticipation. "I'm ready, Captain." "Then let's fly this bird." The pushback was smooth, and Maya's hands moved confidently through the startup sequence. The engines spooled up with their familiar roar, and she could feel the aircraft responding to her touch. Ground control cleared them to taxi, and Maya guided the 737 along the taxiway with smooth, controlled movements. "Nice handling," Sarah commented. "You've got soft hands, that's good. Some pilots muscle the plane around." "My first instructor used to say, 'Fly it with your fingertips, not your fists,'" Maya replied. Sarah laughed. "Smart instructor." As they waited in line for takeoff, Sarah's voice became more serious. "Maya, can I be real with you for a second?" "Of course, Captain." "What Morrison did today was unforgivable, and I'm glad Jennifer shut it down hard, but I need you to know something." Sarah turned to look at Maya directly. "You're going to face more Morrisons in your career. Not as blatant, maybe, but they're out there. Old guys who think women can't fly. White guys who think minorities got a free pass. People who'll question every decision you make and assume you're incompetent until you prove otherwise." Maya nodded slowly. "I know. I've already dealt with some of it at the regional level." "I'm sure you have, so here's what I want to tell you, what I wish someone had told me 20 years ago." Sarah's voice was firm but kind. "Don't let them make you doubt yourself. Don't let them make you fly scared or second-guess your instincts. You earned every single hour in your logbook. You passed every single test. You belong in this seat, and anyone who says otherwise is wrong. Period." Maya felt emotion rising in her throat. "Thank you, Captain. That means more than you know." "Tower Apex 2847, ready for departure," Maya called out, her voice steady. "Apex 2847, runway 18R, cleared for takeoff." Maya's hands moved with confidence, throttles forward, engines responding with a surge of power. The 737 accelerated down the runway, 70 knots, 80 knots, 100 knots. The aircraft became lighter, wanting to fly. "V1, Sarah called. "Rotate," Maya responded, pulling back gently on the yoke. The nose lifted, and suddenly they were airborne, Dallas-Fort Worth falling away beneath them. The morning sun painted the wings gold as they climbed into the Texas sky. "Positive rate," Sarah announced. "Gear up," Maya confirmed, and the landing gear retracted with satisfying clunks. The climb out was textbook perfect. Maya's inputs were smooth, her awareness complete. She monitored every instrument, every system, keeping the aircraft precisely on the departure path. In her peripheral vision, she could see Sarah watching, but it wasn't the scrutinizing gaze of someone looking for mistakes. It was the observant eye of a mentor evaluating talent. At 10,000 feet, Sarah made an announcement to the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. I want to apologize for our delay this morning. We had a crew scheduling situation that required resolution. But I'm happy to report we now have an outstanding crew aboard, and we're going to make up some time en route to Los Angeles. Our first officer today is Maya Thompson, and she's going to give you the smoothest ride you've ever had. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the flight." In the cabin, Emma Rodriguez approached a passenger who'd been filming the earlier drama at the gate, a young woman in her 20s with her phone still out. "Excuse me, miss," Emma said gently. "I noticed you recorded what happened at the gate this morning." The passenger looked nervous. "I wasn't trying to cause trouble, it just seemed important." "It was important," Emma assured her. "But I wanted to let you know, the first officer who was discriminated against. She's flying this plane right now. She's up there in the cockpit doing exactly what she was meant to do." The young woman's eyes widened. "She still flew after all that?" "She did, because she's a professional and she's brilliant at what she does." Emma smiled. "So if you do post that video, maybe mention that part too, the part where discrimination didn't win." The passenger nodded slowly, looking thoughtful. Up in the cockpit, Maya and Sarah had settled into cruise altitude. The flight management system was engaged, and the 737 was purring along smoothly at 37,000 feet. They were over New Mexico now, the desert landscape spreading out beneath them in browns and reds. "Want a hand fly for a bit?" Sarah offered. "Get a feel for the plane." Maya grinned. "Really?" "Really? Disconnect the autopilot. She's all yours." Maya clicked off the autopilot and took manual control of the aircraft. The yoke was alive in her hands, feeding her tiny bits of information: air pressure, wind currents, the weight and balance of 160,000 pounds of metal and fuel and humanity. She made micro-adjustments, keeping the aircraft steady and smooth. "Beautiful," Sarah said quietly. "You've got the touch, Maya. Natural pilot instincts, you can't teach that." They flew in comfortable silence for a while, just two pilots doing what they loved, high above the world and its problems. Then Sarah spoke again. "You know what the best revenge is against people like Morrison?" "What's that, Captain?" "Being so good at what you do that they become irrelevant. Morrison's going to lose his job over his prejudice. But you're going to have a 30-year career. You're going to upgrade to captain. You're going to train the next generation of pilots. And 20 years from now, some young pilot, black, white, Asian, whatever, they're going to sit in a cockpit with you and never once question whether you belong there. Because by then, it'll be normal. That's how we win." Maya felt tears prick her eyes, but she blinked them away. "I want that. I want to be that for someone else." "You will be," Sarah said with certainty. "Trust me. I can spot the ones who are going to make it, and you're one of them." 2 hours later, Maya began the descent into Los Angeles. She handled the approach with textbook precision, altitude callouts perfect, speed management flawless, configuration changes smooth. As the California coastline came into view, Sarah gave her one last piece of advice. "Landing's all yours. Trust your training, trust your instincts, and don't overthink it. You've done this 1,000 times." "Yes, Captain." The runway appeared ahead, and Maya guided the 737 down the glide slope. 50 feet, 40, 30, 20. The flare was perfect, nose up slightly, power to idle, and the main wheels kissed the runway so gently that several passengers actually applauded. "Greaser landing, First Officer Thompson," Sarah said with genuine admiration. "That was beautiful." Maya couldn't stop smiling as she deployed the thrust reversers and brought the aircraft to a safe taxi speed. "Thank you, Captain." As they taxied to the gate, Sarah keyed the PA one more time. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Los Angeles, where the local time is 9:45 a.m. I told you First Officer Thompson would give you a smooth ride, and she delivered. Thank you for flying Apex Airlines." The cabin erupted in applause, not the polite smattering that sometimes followed a landing, but genuine, enthusiastic clapping. Maya's eyes widened in surprise. "That's for you," Sarah said. "That's them saying well done." As the aircraft came to a stop at the gate and the seatbelt sign chimed off, Maya sat back in her seat, letting the moment wash over her. This morning, she'd faced discrimination and humiliation, but she'd also witnessed justice, found allies, and proven, to herself and everyone else, that she belonged exactly where she was. In the cockpit of a Boeing 737, flying, the story of Flight 2847 spread through the aviation community like wildfire. By the time Maya Thompson and Captain Sarah Martinez were debriefing in the Los Angeles crew room, the incident had already been posted on social media. The young passenger Emma had spoken to had indeed posted her video, but she'd added a powerful caption. "This is First Officer Maya Thompson. A racist captain refused to fly with her this morning. The airline suspended him and the crew that stayed silent. Then she got in that cockpit and flew us to LA with the smoothest landing I've ever experienced. This is what courage looks like." The video went viral within hours. 3 million views by evening, 10 million by the next morning. News outlets picked it up. Airline COO suspends entire crew after discrimination incident, read the headlines. Jennifer Walsh's phone didn't stop ringing. Back in Dallas, Jennifer sat in her office at 6 p.m., still in the same clothes she'd worn since 5 a.m. Her assistant Michael brought her a sandwich she wouldn't eat and coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. Her desk was covered with messages from board members, union representatives, lawyers, and surprisingly, hundreds of passengers expressing support. Patricia Morgan knocked and entered without waiting. "Jennifer, I need to brief you on something." Captain Morrison's union rep called. "They're threatening legal action for wrongful termination." Jennifer didn't look up from the report she was reading. "He hasn't been terminated yet. He's suspended pending investigation." "About that investigation," Patricia said, sitting down heavily. "It's going to be thorough, but Jennifer, the outcome is already clear. Tom Chen's testimony is damning. We have witness statements from passengers. Morrison's own words in that operations room were recorded, standard protocol. His career is over." "Good," Jennifer said flatly. "What about the flight attendants?" "Derek Collins is filing a grievance. He's claiming we overreacted and that he was exercising his right to free speech." Patricia rolled her eyes. "His union isn't backing him very hard, though. Even they know defending discrimination is a losing battle." "And Sarah Jenkins and Marcus Webb?" "They started their training this morning. Both were emotional but receptive. Sarah actually called me this afternoon. She wanted to apologize to First Officer Thompson personally. I gave her Maya's contact info. Maya said it was okay." Jennifer finally looked up. "How's Maya doing?" "According to Captain Martinez's report, she's a natural. Perfect flight, perfect landing. Sarah's already recommended her for fast-track captain training." For the first time that day, Jennifer smiled. "Good, that's really good." The investigation took 2 weeks, though the outcome was never in doubt. Captain Derek Morrison was terminated for gross violation of Apex Airlines' anti-discrimination policy. His union filed a grievance but withdrew it when the evidence became overwhelming. Morrison gave one bitter interview to a flying magazine, claiming he was a victim of political correctness gone mad. But even his supporters were few. Most pilots, even the old guard, recognized that refusing to fly with a qualified crew member based on race was indefensible. Derek Collins was terminated as well. His social media posts from after the incident revealed a pattern of racist views that made his termination even easier to justify. He eventually found work at a smaller cargo airline, but his career in passenger aviation was finished. Sarah Jenkins and Marcus Webb completed their discrimination and bystander intervention training. The experience changed them both profoundly. Sarah became quieter, more thoughtful. She started attending diversity and inclusion meetings at the airline, listening more than speaking, learning about experiences she'd never considered. Marcus took a different path. He became vocal, almost aggressive in his advocacy. When he witnessed another captain making an inappropriate comment about a female pilot 6 months later, Marcus immediately reported it. "I stayed silent once," he told the chief pilot. "Never again." The captain received mandatory training, and Marcus earned respect from his colleagues for his courage. But the most profound change happened to Maya Thompson herself. 3 months after the incident, she sat in Jennifer Walsh's office, not because she was in trouble, but because Jennifer had personally requested a meeting. Maya wore her uniform. She was scheduled for a flight later that day, but she looked different now. More confident, more settled into who she was. "First Officer Thompson," Jennifer said warmly, "thank you for coming." "Of course, Ms. Walsh, you wanted to see me." Jennifer slid a folder across her desk. "I wanted to be the first to tell you. You've been accepted into the airline's captain upgrade program. You'll start training in 6 months. Maya's hands trembled as she opened the folder. Her eyes scanned the letter, official, formal, congratulating her on her selection. 6 months, but I've only been with Apex for 9 months, Jennifer finished. And in those 9 months, you've received unanimous praise from every captain you've flown with. Your technical skills are exceptional. Your professionalism is beyond reproach. And Maya, your grace under pressure, what you showed that day at Gate 27, that's the kind of character we want in our captains. Tears filled Maya's eyes. Ms. Walsh, I don't know what to say. Say you'll accept. I accept, Maya said, her voice breaking with emotion. Thank you for everything, for that day, for standing up for me, for believing. Maya, Jennifer interrupted gently, I didn't give you this promotion. You earned it. I just made sure you had the opportunity to show what you could do. 6 months later, Captain Maya Thompson, the youngest black female captain in Apex Airlines history, commanded her first flight. First Officer Amy Rodriguez sat in the right seat. Amy had been one of the silent flight attendants that day at Gate 27, and the experience had transformed her career path. She'd gone back to school, earned her pilot's license, and worked her way through flight training with a determination born from witnessing injustice. Captain Thompson, Amy said as they completed their pre-flight checklist, thank you for giving me a chance. Maya smiled. We all deserve chances, Amy, that's the point. A year after the incident, Apex Airlines became a case study in business schools and aviation management courses. The Gate 27 incident, as it became known, was held up as an example of moral leadership in corporate America. Jennifer Walsh gave a TED Talk that was viewed 15 million times. Sometimes doing the right thing costs you time, money, and convenience, she said to thunderous applause. But the cost of doing nothing is so much higher. It costs you your values, your integrity, and your soul. The airline industry changed, slowly but measurably. Other carriers updated their discrimination policies. Training programs added sections on bystander intervention, and quietly, incrementally, the faces in cockpits began to diversify. 2 years after that morning at Gate 27, Maya Thompson received a letter. It was from a 16-year-old black girl in Memphis named Jasmine. Dear Captain Thompson, it read, I saw your story on the news 2 years ago. I was thinking about giving up on my dream of becoming a pilot because a teacher told me it wasn't realistic. But when I saw what you did, how you faced discrimination and still got in that cockpit and flew, I decided to keep trying. I just got accepted to an aviation program at my high school. I wanted to say thank you for not giving up. You showed me that I belong in the sky too. Maya read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. She thought about her grandmother, lying in that Memphis backyard, pointing at contrails. She thought about that terrible morning at Gate 27. She thought about Jennifer Walsh's courage and Captain Sarah Martinez's mentorship. Then she sat down and wrote back to Jasmine. Dear Jasmine, she began, you do belong in the sky. Don't let anyone tell you different. In her executive office, Jennifer Walsh kept a photograph on her desk. It showed First Officer Maya Thompson standing in front of a Boeing 737, her hand resting on the fuselage, her smile radiant. Sarah Martinez had taken it the day of Maya's first flight after the incident. Whenever Jennifer faced a difficult decision, and there were many, she looked at that photograph. It reminded her why leadership mattered, why principles weren't just words in a policy manual, why standing up for what was right, even when it was expensive and complicated and hard, was always worth it. The photo's caption, in Jennifer's own handwriting, read, Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's doing what's right despite the cost. And underneath, in smaller letters, Gate 27, December 18, 2025, the day we chose principles over convenience. Some stories end with neat resolutions. This one ended with ongoing work, continued vigilance, and the knowledge that progress is measured in small victories and persistent effort. Captain Morrison faded into bitter obscurity. Derek Collins remained unrepentant, but Maya Thompson soared, literally and figuratively, and in her wake she created space for others to soar too. Because that's how change happens. Not all at once, not easily, but through the courage of one person standing up, one leader doing the right thing, and one young pilot refusing to let discrimination clip her wings. The sky, after all, belongs to everyone who earns the right to fly in it. The end.